This video resource will discuss the Title I Part A Campus Written Parent and Family Engagement Policy that is part of the random validation monitoring process conducted by the Federal Program Compliance Division at the Texas Education Agency. Each LEA selected to participate in this validation was provided with the name of one Title I Part A campus. The LEA is responsible for submitting the documentation requested for only that one campus. Documenting overall compliance for a program requirement may require several forms of documentation to be maintained locally and available upon request by TEA and/or an auditor. To ensure the overall compliance with program requirements, LEAs should refer to the program guide and/or other program-related resources that reference the multiple forms of documentation required to be maintained locally. The documentation requested for submission during the random validation process may not include all forms of documentation that are required to be maintained locally. The program requirement being validated is the Campus Written Parent and Family Engagement Policy. The Every Student Succeeds Act, also referenced as ESSA, states that each school served under the Title I Part A program shall jointly develop with and distribute to parents and family members of participating children a written parent and family engagement policy agreed on by such parents that shall describe the means for carrying out the requirements of subsections C through F. Parents shall be notified of the policy in an understandable and uniform format, and to the extent practicable, provided in a language that parents can understand. The LEA will need to submit 2 items of documentation related to this requirement. The documentation required for PFE Item 1.1 is the campus's written parent and family engagement policy. The LEA will need to submit the relevant page or pages of the campus's written parent and family engagement policy for the current school year that references the description of the method or methods of policy distribution and the language or languages in which the policy was distributed to parents and family members of participating students. Please do not submit the campus written parent and family engagement policy in its entirety. Only submit the relevant pages that are referenced here in the acceptable documentation. For the PFE Item 1.1 documentation required, there are several issues that may result in the LEA receiving an improvement needed status. The LEA should be aware of these potential issues as it prepares its documentation for submission. Potential issues include that the auditable documentation requested was not submitted. Another potential issue is that there is no method of distribution written in the policy that was submitted for review. Another potential issue is that there is no reference to the languages in which the policy was distributed in the policy that was submitted for review. Another issue is that the documentation submitted does not meet the statutory requirements for the campus written policy. If the campus is submitting the policy in its entirety, it is strongly recommended that the campus ensure that the policy includes all the statutory requirements. Although we are only requesting the section of the policy that includes the method of distribution and the languages in which the policy was distributed, if a campus submits the policy in its entirety, we are required to review the policy in its entirety if it is submitted. Finally, please be aware that if the campus selected is an elementary campus and the LEA submits the Pre-K Family Engagement Plan as the PFE policy for the campus, the plan must include the Title I PFE requirements. The documentation required for PFE Item 1.2 is evidence of policy distribution to parents and family members of participating students. The LEA will need to submit the relevant page or pages of the evidence of policy distribution. The LEA must submit current school year documentation for only one method as identified in the policy that's used to distribute the campus written PFE policy to parents and family members of participating students. Here are some examples of acceptable distribution methods. The student handbook. The LEA could submit relevant pages from the student handbook that includes the written parent and family engagement policy. The campus website. The LEA could print out the campus website where the most current policy is posted and an active link to access the document. Direct mail. A copy of the letter accompanying the policy distribution to parents via direct mail or documentation that is required to be maintained as per local policies and procedures. Email. A copy of the email that was sent out includes the email header, the to, from, the CC, the subject, and the attachments, or the documentation that is required to be maintained as per local policies and procedures. Newspaper publication. Newspaper clipping or printout referencing the policy being published in the newspaper. Please be sure this includes the date of the newspaper publication. Student registration distribution, beginning of school year distribution, or teacher-parent conference distribution. This documentation that is required to be maintained as per local policies and procedures. Only one of these methods is required as documentation for PFE Item 1.2. For the PFE Item 1.2 documentation required, there are several issues that may result in the LEA receiving an improvement needed status. The LEA should be aware of these potential issues as it prepares its documentation for submission. Potential issues include that the auditable documentation requested was not submitted. Another potential issue is that the documentation submitted does not align to the method of distribution and language described in the policy that was submitted for PFE Item 1.1. Another potential issue is that documentation from a prior year was submitted instead of current year documentation. Finally, another issue is if a campus submits the web link as its method for distribution and the web link is not working. The campus should also ensure that the current year policy is posted on the campus website if that is the method of distribution. If a campus references a posting the policy in other languages, the website should also provide the policy in such languages. Questions related to this random validation for Title I Part A may be referred to Jaime Huerta or Vivian Smurl at essasupport@tea.texas.gov.